Dear students, we have now come to the concluding part of our topic on periorestorative interrelationship. Now today you're going to learn about the aesthetic tissue management, under that managing the interproximal papilla, correcting open gingival embrasure and pontic design, the occlusal considerations in restorative therapy, and special restorative considerations in case of root resected teeth, splinting and anterior aesthetic surgery. Now to begin with the aesthetic tissue management. Now what is an interproximal embrasure? As all of you know from your previous years, embrasures are V-shaped valleys between the adjacent teeth, providing a spillway for food so that the food doesn't get lodged in the soft tissues and is directed away from the soft tissues during mastication. So what are the qualities of an ideal interproximal embrasure? An ideal interproximal embrasure houses the gingival papilla without impinging on it and extend interproximally the tooth contact to the top of papilla so that no excess space exists to trap the food or to be aesthetically displeasing. Now the height of the papilla is determined by the level of the bone, biological width and form of the gingival embrasure. Changes in the shape of the embrasure influences the height and form of the papilla. The interdental papilla ideally has a sulcus which is about 1 to 1.5 millimeters deeper than the gingival or the facial sulcus. Now this can be explained from the picture as the free gingival margin is about 3 millimeters from the underlying alveolar bone, whereas the papillary tip is about 4 to 4.5 millimeters above the alveolar bone. So this difference of 1 to 1.5 millimeters gives a deeper sulcus depth to the interdental papillae. Now there are three variations in the papillary height. If the distance on the tooth contact from the underlying bone is 5 mm or less, the papilla almost always fills the entire space and is aesthetically pleasing. Now if the same distance is 6 millimeters, that is, the contact point is further incisally, only 56% of the papilla fills up the space in the embrasures, and if the distance from the underlying bone to the contact point is 7 mm, only 37% of the papilla could fill up the space. Now an ideal contact is about 2 to 3 mm coronal to the epithelial attachment. If the sulcus depth of the papilla exceeds 3 mm, the risk of the papillary recession follows restorative procedures. Now if you remember the previous class with regard to the gingival sulcus, the same holds true. Now there are three variations in the papilla sulcus. As explained earlier, the shape and height of the papilla depends upon the form of the gingival embrasure. Now in the first scenario, where the gingival embrasure is too wide, the papilla assumes a blunted shape with a shallow sulcus. If the embrasures are too narrow, the papilla may be impinged upon and may get inflamed as it grows out facially and lingually and forms a cone. The ideal embrasure is the one which houses a healthy papilla with a sulcus depth of 2.5 to 3.5 millimeters, as you can see in the picture B. Now when evaluating the individual papilla, the comparison is often done with the adjacent papilla. The first situation is when the bone under the papilla in question is apical to the adjacent bone level. Now this happens due to bone loss, and this is purely a periodontal problem. If the bone is at the same level as the adjacent papilla, the problem is not that of the periodontium, but the problem is of an open gingival embrasure. So how do we correct this problem of open gingival embrasures? The problem of open gingival embrasures occurs due to the interproximal contact being located too high coronally, means it is located too much away from the alveolar bone. A high interproximal contact occurs because of two conditions. First condition is where the tooth roots are too divergent, and due to which the interproximal contact, they move too far away coronally and they lead to an open embrasure. And the next condition where the tooth roots are almost parallel to each other and the interdental papilla is normal, but an open embrasure still exists. Now this problem has occurred due to the excessive tapering of the tooth shape or the excessive contouring of the tooth crown. Now these problems can be managed by restorative procedures. This can be corrected by moving the margins of the restoration subgingivally by about 1 to 1.5 millimeters, and the contact point is now moved from the incisal area towards the tip of the papilla. Now this can be explained by this picture. In the first picture you can see that there's an open embrasure because of the too much of tapering of the crown. Now this can be corrected by placing a matrix band in the desired position, and it is held in place, and the restorative material is placed at the side of the matrix band. And in the third picture you can see that the open gingival embrasure is corrected. Now how do we manage the problem of gingival embrasures in case of gingival recession? The management depends upon which area we need to manage this problem. In the anterior aesthetic zone, the interproximal contacts are carried apically towards the papilla tip to eliminate the large open embrasures. In the posterior areas also, the interproximal contacts are moved as far apically as possible, thereby leaving a small embrasure of a size which can be convenient for usage of an interdental aid like an interdental brush, and the oral hygiene can be maintained easily. Now moving on to the next aspect, that is the Pontic design. Now as you all know, Pontic is that part of a prosthesis which replaces the lost natural tooth. Now several designs have been proposed like the ridge lap or the ovate Pontic and the modified ridge lap. Now first is the ovate Pontic. The ovate Pontic is the ideal Pontic form. It is created by forming a receptor site in the edentulous ridge by a burr or electrosurgery or a scalpel. Now this surgically created receptor site is shaped in such a way that facially it appears like a creative gingival margin, whereas it tapers towards the palatal tissue. Now this shape allows access for maintaining the oral hygiene from the palatal side. Now the Pontic also provides, along with the maintenance of the oral hygiene, the maintenance of the interdental papilla on the adjacent tooth. Now this can be explained by this picture. Now in the first picture you can see that the maxillary right central incisor is deemed to be extracted. Now prior to extraction, the adjacent teeth are shaped and they are prepared. Thereafter, an interdent restoration or a provisional restoration is placed with the Pontic, which goes below the gingival margin about 2 millimeters, and you can see the provisional restoration in place in the fourth picture. Now following 4 weeks, the height of the Pontic is reduced by about 1 to 1.5 millimeters, and it is kept in place for about 9 months, and you can see that how well this gingival margin has been shaped up and the papilla is maintained interdentally. And in picture 6 you can see the effect of this procedure are quite stable even after several years. Next is the ridge lap Pontic. This type of Pontic conforms to the convexity of the ridge and creates an undersurface which is concave, and it snugly fits onto the ridge. And therefore this type of Pontic is not recommended, as it is very difficult to clean under this type of Pontic. The modified ridge lap Pontic. Now this Pontic is designed so that facially it is concave and it provides the aesthetic function, whereas unlike the ridge lap Pontic, lingually it is tapered and it is provided with a more open shape to allow access for oral hygiene. Now occlusal considerations in restorative therapy. With the increased utilization of say dental implants and non-metallic restorations, there is also an increased problem of management of the forces which are directed on these restorations, as these restorations are particularly sensitive to occlusal trauma. Now, certain important procedures should not be overlooked during fabrication of prosthesis. As far as occlusion is concerned, there should be an even simultaneous contacts on all the teeth during centric closure. This will help to distribute the occlusal forces evenly over the teeth. When the mandible moves from the centric closure, some form of canine guidance is always desirable with no posterior contacts. So there will be a contact only on the anterior teeth. Now this combination of anterior guidance and posterior disclusion reduces the distribution of forces to the anterior teeth, which they end up receiving the less force compared to the posterior teeth. Now, a harmonious relationship between the patient's anterior guidance and neuromuscular function is a must. Now, this can be assessed by absence of fremitus or mobility of anterior teeth, speech clarity for the patient, comfort with the overjet, overbite, and guidance during chewing and holding the head upright. Now, the next section is on special restorative consideration. Now, in case of the root resected teeth, how are they restored? They are generally restored with one-piece cast post and core restoration to create an adequate foundation for the final restoration. Now, as the root resected teeth present with surface concavities on the root trunk, appropriate contours are developed on the restorations to facilitate for hygiene access. The gingival embrasure forms, they are also fluted in these areas so as to aid access in these areas for cleansing. The next procedure under this is splinting. Now, splinting is a technique which holds the loose teeth together, and it is indicated in case of teeth which are mobile or teeth which have been migrated, and even in case of prosthetics. They are used to hold the abutments together as a single unit. Now, it is always important to first determine the cause of tooth mobility, and thereafter only the splinting is carried out. If the tooth mobility is caused due to excessive occlusal forces, as in the parafunctional occlusion, the occlusion therapy should be carried out first prior to splinting. Mobility can also occur due to periodontal disease, and therefore the periodontal inflammation must be controlled prior to splinting. At the same time, the care should also be taken so that the interproximal connectors do not impinge on the interdental papilla. Now, you're going to use a restorative material and a wire splint, or you're going to use different metal splints. So in this case, the connecting wires which connect the mobile teeth, they should not impinge on the interdental papilla. Also, the adequate space must be provided between the connector and the papilla for access to oral hygiene, which can be maintained with either a floss or an interdental brush. Now, moving on to the section on anterior aesthetic surgery. Now, these are generally indicated in the areas where aesthetic is of prime importance. The different methods like gingivectomy, apical repositioning flap with osseous recontouring, and orthodontic therapy to position the gingival tissue level, etc., are usually employed as part of anterior aesthetic surgical procedures. Now, these procedures, if you remember in the previous class, I have explained them under the crown lengthening procedures. Now, it is important to convey the expected outcomes to the patients prior to attempting the surgery. Now, with the advent of sophisticated technology, a visual preview of the end result of the surgery can be put forth to the patient, and only after the patient's approval, the surgery is performed. So, stone cast of the patient's own teeth may be used, and an acrylic or a composite veneer is constructed on the cast. Now, this can also be used as a surgical template. Now, this procedure I'll explain you with the help of this picture. Now, you can see in the first picture the crown form as well as the gingival margins are not at the same level, and aesthetically it is very unpleasant. And so a stone model has been prepared for from the patient, and a surgical template has been constructed, and at the time the patient's approval is taken for the final level of the gingival margins and the crown form. Thereafter, the surgical procedure is attempted. As you can see in the in the picture number 5, and about 3 mm of bone has been contoured or removed from the margin of the template. Now the template is also used to suture the flap in the new position, and you can see in picture 7 the immediate post-operative results, and the picture 8 is after several years after performing the surgery. You can see the pleasing aesthetic appearance, and the margins are at the same level, and the interdental papilla also is maintained. Now this brings us to the end of this class on the perio-restorative interrelationship. Any doubts regarding this topic you can always put forth, and thank you and take care.